In this episode of Ask Paul Kirtley, we are going to talk about my go-to bivvy bag, looking after boots on hiking trips and keeping in backpacking shape, something which, frankly, I'm not at the moment. Welcome to episode 83 of Ask Paul Kirtley. Now, I think this will be less of a ramble through my unconscious brain than perhaps the end of the previous one. Much more practical questions here, which I hope will help many of you who are watching. I've got a coffee and it's just stopped raining, so I thought I would sit down underneath this willow and answer a few of your questions. Thank you for sending them in. Keep sending them in the order that they're here in my little folder. So this is one that's come through on Twitter from Rowan Blackwood. His question is, "Hi Paul, what's your go-to bivvy bag? I have seen you use the Snugpack SF bivvy, but that was specifically for ultralight. Just wondering if you use another bivvy as your daily go-to. Thanks. Hashtag Ask Paul Kirtley," and that's important, of course, for me to find those questions. Thank you, Rowan. Good question. Yeah, so as Rowan said, I've done a couple of videos quite a few years ago now. It frightens me how quickly the years go by. Quite a few years ago on my channel, and also they were on my blog at paulkirtley.co.uk, about lightening the load with your sleeping and tarping and bivvy kit, not over engineering it. And one of the things that I showed in that was a very lightweight setup with an integral design sill tarp, a mountain equipment 2-season down bag, and a ultralight 3/4 length thermarest, Pro Light I think it was, and the SF bivvy. And then I think I did another video on how to set that lighter setup up at some point as well. And yeah, I like that SF bivvy. My colleague Henry got one initially, and I was impressed with it. I thought it might be a bit flimsy. It feels quite thin and it packs down really small, and he had it for a while and it lasted well, and so I got one too, and I like it in the summer. I like top zip bags generally because you can zip them open, sit up, and they'll lay out on the ground cover that you want behind without them all kind of riding up and pulling everything. So if you've got things, you want to put stuff there, as you take your top off and what have you, if you want to put things there as a pillow, it's everything's there that needs to be, and then you can just get up and get out quickly and all those sorts of things without disrupting everything. So I like top zips. I particularly like top zip bags in the winter. So for like winter, and I mean like 5-season use, if you like. So winter in very snowy conditions in the Boreal. If I'm using a bivvy bag there, I like the Dutch military bivvy bag because as big as I am, I'm 6 foot a bit, sort of 181 or something like that meters, which isn't that big by the Dutch standards. They're very tall as a nation. I think the tallest nation on earth on average. Their bivvy bags are quite large, so I find them really good for winter because you can get a big sleeping bag in there. You can put other things in there as well. People on my online elementary have seen a couple of videos about winter bivvying there, and people who've done winter courses with me in the past will know exactly what I'm talking about, where you can get other things in there without compressing the bag, and that's important. So one of the things why that's relevant then is the SF bag isn't huge, and if I'm using if I'm in the winter with a big puffy winter bag, it's a bit constrained, particularly if you want to put a full-length sleeping mat in there as well. So that's one of the reasons I use it as part of my sort of ultralight summer setup, because I'm not trying to put too much other material in there, and it also packs down. And probably you don't need that as much protection in the summer as well, even though it is very protective. So I like it. It's in proportion with the rest of the setup. Have I used it in autumn and spring in the UK with 3 to 4 season bags? Absolutely. Have I used it in the winter in the UK when it's cold and damp? Yes, I have. But as I say, with a 4 season bag, I find it's a little bit small for me personally. So what I tend to use just as my general purpose go-to bag, and one that I recommend to many people, and we've got boxes full of them for our courses. Here comes the rain again. I've got boxes full of them for courses, as just the British military, the standard MOD bag, whether it's an olive green one or a DPM or any other camouflage pattern. We've just got old OG and DPM ones, and they work well. They're not super heavy, they pack down reasonably small, and they are robust, and they're reasonably roomy. They're very simple. There's no zips and whatnot in there. It's literally just a sock, if you like, for your sleeping bag. But I like them. I've used them for years. They wash well, they reproof well with Nikwax, which is what I do, Nikwax TX Direct. So that's my kind of work a day. I'm just in the woods for a week under a tarp teaching a course. That's the one I grab and bring with me, and that's any season of the year in the UK. So that's my go-to. As I say, if I want to really cut the weight, I've got the SF bag, and if I want to go bigger for winter with a top zip bag and a top zip sleeping bag so that I can get in and out in the snow, etc., while that can just fall away and without pulling everything around, and just a little less awkward, then I use the Dutch bag with a Nanook top zip 5 season Arctic bag. Those are my kind of systems, and I probably should make some videos on some of those things at some point, I know, but I try not to make my channel too much about kit. But of course I use this stuff a lot. People can benefit from it. The only problem I get though is, like, for example, that video that you're referencing there, that sleeping bag that Mountain Equipment made, which I really like, and I still use it. I've been using it again recently, and I'll be using it on a course the week after next again. It's August. Packs down, it's really light, it's not too warm for sleeping in the summer as well, which is, you know, you get too sweaty. Yes, you can take your 3 or 4 or 5 season bags out in the summer, but personally I just get too hot and sweaty in them. So I like it for that. But the problem that I get now, just after I put that video out, they discontinued that model for some reason, and then people still write to me now saying, oh, you know, you recommended this bag, what else would you recommend? Well, actually I didn't recommend that bag in the first place. I was just saying that's what I use, and it was about the principle. It's a 2 season lightweight down bag. That's the point. Mountain Equipment Zero, whatever it was, 400, I can't even remember what the hell it's called now. That's not the important point. It's the principles. The principles are the important things. If I can get the principles across to you, then you can go and work out. You know, you can go to RER, you can go to MEC, you can go to Cotswolds, or, you know, whatever your local camping store is, or your supplier that or manufacturers that you've got available to you locally, and get the right stuff with some semblance of reference to the principles that I'm sharing. It's not about particular pieces of equipment, unless I say it's about particular pieces of equipment, and in that case it wasn't. So 2 season down bag, ultralight SF bag, pro light Thermarest, Siltarp, Integral Design Siltarp 1, great little combo, weighs very little. I'll link to the video if you've not seen that one before. It's quite popular on my channel, which means if I was like a real YouTuber going for views, I probably should just make loads of that type of stuff. But anyway, I'm going to try and keep this concise today, so I'll stop going off on tangents. Looking after boots on hiking trips. Again, this is a Twitter question from Joey G, and their question is, hey Paul, what's your preferred way to clean and maintain leather boots while outdoors on a trip, or using boots every day? Leather needs a lot of upkeep, so if you were doing a week-long trip, would you clean whilst out? Nice picture of boots and rucksack and whatnot there as well. So yeah, I do tend to use leather boots when I'm working. I tend to wear some Rogues when it's warm and dry, or I tend to use lower like patrol boots or military boots when it's a bit wetter and I need a bit more grip in the mud, particularly here in Sussex where we run courses. The mud's quite heavy, clay-based soil, and it gets very greasy when it gets wet, so having a good lugged tread to maintain some semblance of grip is important. And so yeah, I've used all sorts over the years, but while I'm out in the field I will just use I use an old nail brush if I need to clean mud off, just a bit of warm water, possibly a tiny bit of soap if necessary, but usually not. Warm water just to brush off the mud, and then let them dry a little bit so they're not absolutely dripping wet. Damp is fine, and then I just put boot polish on, so like a standard boot polish as opposed to like a parade gloss. And just try and keep getting some of that in every day if necessary. And then when they're home, I'll maybe use some more dub-in type things, that type of sort of more penetrating waterproofing treatment. I've moved over entirely to boots now that don't have a waterproof membrane liner, and so I also use waterproof socks like sealskins as and when I need to with the boots. But I also find that means that they don't hold as much moisture when I'm using them in the field, even if they get a bit damp. And that's just the system I use. So I just try and keep them clean, try and put some polish on. When I'm hiking, it depends where I am. Like, I mean, when I'm hiking in Scotland, and we'll come on to that with the fitness, I used to tend not to I used to wear sort of full grain leather boots. I used to tend not to take anything with me. I used to just make sure they were in really good nick before I went. I was never going for more than a week, right? So, and I'm not in, I'm in acidic peat bog a little bit perhaps, through heather over rocks and whatnot. But I just, made sure they were fully well treated before I went, wore them, did the hike. Because again, I don't want to even carry a tin of boot polish with me, all right? So, but I think if I was going for longer than that, if I was doing a longer distance trail and I was using leather boots, I would probably take a very small amount of whatever I used, possibly decanted, just to, the thing I always found with particularly, doing sort of week-long backpacking, mountain climbing, mountain walking trips in Scotland or what have you, was it was always just the fronts that got scuffed. I think a combination of the heather and some of the abrasive rocks, etc. It was always the front of the toes that got scuffed. So I think just a little bit of something to put on there, just a little bit of boot polish into a container, like a little tiny little Nalgene or something, that might be a good thing to take just to keep them in good nick. But to be honest with you, I don't tend to use that type of boot now for backpacking, which is why I'm being a little bit academic about it, sort of speculative about what I would do if I was using the type of boot that I used to wear, because what I tend to wear are more fabric-based boots, perhaps with a reinforced bit around the toe. So I've had some, what did I have? Garmont boots that I quite liked, really gripper sole. I've had some Scarpas, Akus, various different ones, but all very similar in the sense that they're fabric and they don't need polish on them or anything, and quite a soft sole, so they're grippy on rock as well when you're up in the hills. And in the winter I got some Scarpa winter boots. I can't remember the model. They're bright red and yellow. They're really good. But again, they have kind of like nubuck leather, but then they're reinforced around the front. They've got a big rubber band around the front, and that's the bit that always gets worn on my boots when I'm in the hills. So again, I don't, and that tends to be just going out maybe for an overnighter, sort of snow hole or a bivvy or something, but tends to be just day hiking that I do, day walks in the mountains in the winter in Scotland, back to a bothy or a warm accommodation in the evening or something. Days are so short anyway. So yeah, that's kind of me. The heaviest use that I make of leather boots is just being out and about in the woods all the time and working in the woods, spring, summer and fall, particularly in the UK. And I get a good few years out of as I say, I have a lighter weight set of Rogues and I have a set of lowers, and neither are lined, both are leather, completely leather, and I just use boot polish on them, just regular kiwi or cherry blossom or what have you, and then just make sure they're reasonably clean as well. That's it. So again, a couple of different things to kind of go off on. I do use Jornkangens, I do use Lundhags, you know, with the rubber feet and things, different subject altogether, but that's more for winter use. So keeping in backpacking shape. Now, this is from Peter, by the way. What's your recommended way to get or stay in backpacking shape aside from getting out there with a rucksack, e.g. when your time outdoors is limited? Now, I'm not in great shape at the moment. I'm probably in the worst shape of my entire life after having a year and a half of COVID restrictions. I naturally kind of go up in weight a bit over the winter normally, and then as I normally do some sort of winter trip, or I like to do some sort of winter trip in January or February, and then get back into teaching late March in terms of teaching courses in the UK, and then I'm teaching right through the year. Normally do about 8 weeks of canoe tripping in amongst that as well, and so my weight kind of comes down as I'm working, and my fitness goes up, and then my weight, you know, I tend to put the pounds on over the winter a bit. You know, I'm indoors more. Even, you know, if I am out during the days are shorter, I'm doing less, I'm not tripping as much, I'm catching up with the business, I'm eating well, Christmas, wine, whiskey, all of those things puts the weight on, right? But during those periods, normally I do try and keep some semblance of sort of fitness, because otherwise it's just harder when you get back to the sort of late winter and early spring. I do like to get out walking generally, and I think for me that's kind of like the baseline, and still, even through COVID, I've gone out for walks, but I haven't done as much going away, staying places and hiking, which is another reason why, you know, I've put weight on, other people have put weight on as well. And I don't particularly like, and this is me, I've used gyms a lot in the past, but I don't like going to gyms just for the sake of exercising, for burning calories, right? I like having a goal, I like to be training towards something. So I think that's one thing for me, is if you want to keep fit for backpacking, or you're training for a trip you want to do, whether it's, you know, a long distance path you want to hike, or, you know, whatever it is, what your goal is with your backpacking, is have that goal in mind. That's the first thing, because I think I find just training for the sake of it, I find that difficult. And if you just go out for a walk with a backpack, you know, if you do your normal walking route for, you know, what you might do for a morning walk or an afternoon walk or something, yeah, you can put your backpack on, and I do that sometimes. One of the things that I've done in the past is, if I know I've got a hiking trip come up, but I haven't done tons and tons of hiking, rather than just going for a walk for 2 hours, what I'll do is I'll go for a walk and I will put a 5 litre, you know, like the 5 litre bottles of water that you get from the local store. I'll put that in a day pack, and I'll put a waterproof jacket in there. I'll put a litre of water to drink, and then I've got, like, you know, 7 kilos there to carry, and I do my normal walk, and that just helps. And I don't have a waistband with that, and I do that specifically because it helps. You know, it's not all day that you've got that hanging off your shoulders, but it's long enough that you start to feel it a bit, but it does start to strengthen up a little bit where you need to have in your upper body. You're having to stabilize it with your core, and of course you're exercising your legs in the same way as when you're walking. So that's something that you can just modify if you're going out for walks, you know, 2 or 3 times a week anyway, just as part of your routine, just to get your head clear or what have you. You can just throw a backpack on of a moderate weight and do that. If you're training for something a bit harder, then what I do is I kind of take it a step further, and I'd recommend you could do the same thing. Is you don't have to hike all day, but it's again about getting your body used to the load. So what I have is a 20 litre jerry can, like the black plastic jerry cans that we have in camp, that we use for the water supply. I have one of those, and of course the great thing about that is that you don't have to fill it. So if you wanted to start with, you know, 10 litres in there, which would be 10 kilos, about 20 pounds or what have you, 22 pounds, you could do. But I tend to work with the 5 to 7 kilo backpack, and then I'll just, okay, right now, maybe once a week, put the big backpack on. So it's like my backpacking backpack with a waist belt with a full 20-litre jerry can in there, which is 20 kilos, which is more than I would carry on a normal backpacking trip these days, unless I'm loaded with tons of food. Because again, we talked about kit. You can get lightweight sleeping bags, lightweight bivvy bags, lightweight tents, everything, titanium pots. There's so much lightweight kit now. When I started backpacking, 30 odd years ago when I was a student, A, I couldn't afford lightweight gear really, and B, there wasn't that much around. And so everything was heavy, and I was quite slight. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But one of the problems I had was I was very fit in my legs because of my cycling, but my upper body struggled on the backpacking trips with the heavy gear on my shoulders, just because even with a waist belt, I just got really sore traps and really sore shoulders. And so that was something I needed to work on. But what I tend to do now is, if I'm going, like, there's a 2-hour walk route that I do fairly regularly, and I'll normally just walk it, right? But then if I know I've got something coming up, I'll start with a 5-litre water, a few extra bits in there, make it about 7 or 8 kilos. And then if I know I've got a really hard hike coming up, I'll take the 20 odd, it's a 2 kilo backpack that I use, and a 20 kilos of water, plus the jerry, plus a litre of water to drink. But I'll still only go out for a couple of hours, and that's more weight than I'm likely to be carrying. And if I'm got my normal summer backpacking trip set up, it's less weight than that. So even though my time that I'm training is less than walking for a full day, I'm carrying more weight than I would do on a backpacking trip, unless I'm taking more than a week's worth of food. So that's training me quite well. But that's quite a flat route, okay? But at least it's getting my body used to the load. So that's one thing I could recommend. So it's not any extra equipment other than a jerry can. I mean, you could just pack your backpacking kit in there if you wanted to, but I quite like overloading it. And the easiest way I've got of overloading it is putting 20 litres of water in there. What I also found is I used to do a lot of cycling. I don't do so much cycling anymore. And I used to do a lot of mountain biking and cross-country mountain biking. I used to do cross-country mountain bike racing. So I was quite slight. I used to weigh about 11 stone back then when I was racing. And I had a lot of strength in my legs. And I would do weight training for my legs over the winter and stuff as well. But I didn't have a ton of upper body strength, and so I always found the rucksack started to wear on me a little bit when I was backpacking. I had no trouble with my legs, apart from on really, really steep slopes, my calf muscles took it in a way that they didn't when I was cycling. And so I'd find just doing weighted calf raises would be good for, and you can do that with your rucksack on, right? You don't need to do anything with bars or anything. Just put a rucksack on and do calf raises. It's better if you can overload it, because you're doing a lot of repetitions on a steep hill, right? Whereas you don't want to, it gets boring doing that many calf raises. But if you can get to a point where you've increased the strength way beyond what you need for going up the hill in terms of carrying you and your backpack, then when you come to do the hill, it's easier. That's what I found. So if you can, if you've got your backpack and you overload it again, but then maybe hold a couple of weights or something as well, a couple of kettlebells or something that these days easily available, then you're kind of adding maybe like 40. I mean, if you could hold 2 20-kilo kettlebells plus your 20 kilo, you've got like 60 extra kilos on top of your body weight there that you could use for doing calf raises, and you get your calves pretty strong doing that. The other thing I find that's good is if you can find a steep slope, and I don't have one of these near to where I live, I have one near to where I work, right? So sometimes I do this, depending, if I'm working down here a lot, there's quite a good few little steep hills around here. Find something that takes you at least a minute to climb, and preferably 2 minutes, but a minute to 2 minutes, and then do hill repeats with a rucksack on. And again, I will just borrow a jerry can from camp and pop that in a rucksack that I keep in my vehicle actually that I use to drive down here, and I'll go off to do a training session maybe in between courses, find a hill, and I'll go and do hill repeats up to maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes to go up, because of course when you go down you kind of, your heart rate and everything's going down. I mean, it's still raised compared to walking on the flat, and you're still having to stop the weight, but unless it's super steep, it's quite easy going downhill. So you don't want too long a break in between doing the ups and downs, right? So that's why I say if you've got like 2 or 3 minutes that you can go up and then down and up and down, and keep doing that, and do as many of those as you can. I mean, there are protocols for doing hill repeats a little bit more scientifically, but basically find some hills and go up and down it until you've had enough of it, basically, is a fairly layman's way of doing it. And you don't have to do that every time you go out. If you're used to carrying a backpack anyway, just get some hill work into your legs as well. You know, you're not training to do a commando test or something. You're just training to go on a backpacking trip. You just don't want to be completely out of your element when you actually come to the first hill. So yeah, if you do a bit of cycling in the gym, or step, you know, Versa trainers or step machine or cross trainer or something, just for cardio, go for a walk a few times a week, add some weight, maybe do a bit of work to make sure your calves are strong, maybe find a few hills to go up and down. You'll be good, I think. You know, and you know, again, world's your oyster. If you can do some if you can go out for some day walks in the Peak, you know, if you're in the UK, I don't know if you are, but you know, in the UK you could go to the South Downs or the Peak District or Snowdonia or Scotland and go and do a day hike on a hill. If you do that, you know, once in a while, and throw in other stuff that you can do during the week when you're closer to home, bit of gym work, going out for a walk on a weekend, or a summer evening or what have you, you keep yourself in reasonably good shape. Particularly it's the load carrying as well, particularly, not just walking, I think makes a big difference. So that when you go out with your, you know, 10 kilos of gear plus a bit of food, maybe even less than 10 kilos of gear in the summer these days, it feels light compared to what you've been training with, and it doesn't bother you wearing it all day. So I know I'm not in particularly good backpacking shape at the moment, but clearly I can talk about all of those things because they're all things that I've done in the past to get into shape for backpacking trips and cross-country skiing trips and all those sorts of things as well, some modifications on those exercises. So, and that's it. This is available as per always on YouTube, all the podcast platforms, etc., as an audio file. Again, people ask me, why don't you show things? Because it goes out primarily as an audio podcast, and I sit in front of the video camera to record it, and it goes onto my YouTube as well. But clearly it's an audio answer to a question. That's the point of these shows. Other practical stuff on my YouTube channel, other practical stuff on my site. There are hundreds of lessons, practical lessons on my, got a squirrel running around up there as well, hundreds of lessons on my online elementary courses as well, as well as a continuation study series. Go to onlinebushcraftcourses.com if you want to learn more about that. The online elementary course is open all the time. You can join whenever you like. The continuation study series, you can join that whenever you like, as long as you're a member of the online elementary. But it's cheapest to join when you join the online elementary at the same time. You get a discounted starting offer there, which is discounted quite significantly, and then you stay a member of that as long as you like. And it's like a monthly magazine of me doing practical things, as well as teaching you know, technical knowledge about certain things as well, so knots and fire and plant identification, all sorts of stuff on there. Go and have a look at that. And then of course the tree and plant course comes out, we open that every year. So there is a lot of other material out there, and I'm saying that, I know some of you know this, but if you're just coming to me for the first time and thinking, who's this guy talking, this is just my Q&A session, right? I do a Q&A show as part of tons of other stuff that I do. There's a lot of practical videos and tutorials, and if you like reading, there are hundreds of thousands of words of descriptive articles on my site at paulkirtley.co.uk, photo blogs, photo tutorials, lots and lots of material there. And you get my fire focus sessions in the online elementary continuation study series, but I do have a little free 10-part lesson series called Fire Fundamentals, which is a free course. I'll put the link below, but basically you can go to, my little short code is pkblogit, so pkblog.it. That's my personal little short code that I use, PK for Paul Kirtley, blog.it, pkblogit /fire fundamentals. That will take you to where you can get that free course as well. It's all free material, it's on the web anyway, but I've drawn it all together into a coherent course along with some email guidance about the relevance and context of certain things. Basically gets delivered to you over 10 emails over just under 2 weeks. That's a nice thing for you to have if you want to see more practical stuff from me. I'm certainly not just sat here talking, and hopefully you found some use in the answers. Hopefully you find some use in all those other materials that are out there. There's my book, Wilderness Axe Skills, as well, which people keep telling me to plug. I don't have it with me today. wildernessaxeskills.com for more information on my book. Yes, I have all these different websites with lots of stuff going on. Busy. So lots for you to get your teeth into there. And if you've got questions, I'll answer them on this show. All right, take care. See you soon. See you in another episode. See you somewhere else on the web. And maybe even see you on a course or a trip in real life. Yeah, okay, take care. Cheers.